Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Y'all ready for this? Good to see you guys.
Nice to have you on. It's
Sorry this took so long. I apologize.
no, it's all good. You're a busy man. Honestly, whenever I messaged you, I did not even expect a response. And it just whenever you responded, I was elated. So,
Oh no worries, man. I try to. I was in your spot once. I mean, there weren't podcasts around when I was trying to get going, but I always try to do as many as I can because I was probably like you guys, enjoyed doing this when I was younger and was looking for a place to do it. Right?
well, we definitely appreciate that. And actually, one of my mentors, Jim Lang, uh, he's kind of helped me through this. He told me if I ever have you on, I have to ask you about a flag football injury. I don't know what it is. He would not tell us more than that. He just said, ask James about his flag football injury.
Well, I mean, I don't know which one Jimmy's referring to because I was kind of Ray Ferraro would always make a point of saying on the air because there are numerous times I would show up to the set or to a game on location with a flag football injury. And I would always try to compare it. You know, Ray, I've been through everything you've been through. It's just you did it in the NHL and I did it in beer league flag football. So there was one time when I had a pulled, it was a groin or a quad or something, but I couldn't sit right in my chair. And like I couldn't talk right the entire show. There was also a time I got knocked out
Oh, wow.
in a game, and I had like bad post concussion for a few months to the point where Bob would look at me like on some shows and says, "You can't formulate a sentence tonight. Are you okay?" So it was the one sport I always played, right? From basically 20 to probably 50, I probably quit at. So yeah, there were numerous flag football injuries.
Well, Jim, that was for you.
Yeah.
I mean, again, thank you for coming on. I mean, you've had a huge year going to the World Cup. I mean, not many people can say they do that, especially going to another country. I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
try and get to some games when it comes to Canada next time around. But how was that going to Qatar?
Before I answer, I'm fascinated by these posters behind you.
So we have a segment at the end of our show called 5 Minutes for Fighting.
Okay.
In Cornwall, we had a local men's senior team. It was mostly fighting on ice. Hockey was in between the whistles.
Yeah,
Right.
you could call that hockey.
Well, that's
Yeah,
men's
okay.
senior hockey, period, right?
Yeah.
It's there. So our two regulars that are on, this is the one poster, Paul Shantz, and next to him is my cousin Corey Payman. So we try and switch up the decor every week. So I figured give these boys a little nod, and my dad's always messaging me for sneak peeks. So I got
I love it.
behind me with UP.
I love it. I love it. Paul Shantz, Corey Payment.
Yeah.
That sounds like some of those like trade deadline deals I do when I never heard of the guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely future considerations.
Yeah.
They're players to be named later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, the World Cup. Yeah, it was one of the great experiences of my career. Before I played flag football, I played soccer my entire life growing up, and loved the game. And my career got sidetracked into hockey and football and all those other things, but it was always at the back of my mind that the thing I'd really love to do is a World Cup. I was fortunate enough to do the Women's World Cup in 2015, the one in Canada, which was awesome with Christine Sinclair and everyone. And then to do this one, to be the first one that Canada was into since '86. I don't pretend, and I said it to the guys on air, I don't it's hard when you cover so many different sports and when you have families and such. I I can't watch every Premier League game, Bundesliga game. I'm not as big. My knowledge base compared to like the Luke Wildmans of the world is not the same. But I've watched the national team, like every national team game for probably 5 years. So I'm probably more into international soccer. And so World Cup is, look at it's the biggest sporting event in the world. And to be there, and this was such a unique, we'll never have this again, I don't think, where the entire World Cup was basically in a city the size of, you know, um, mid-sized Canadian city, essentially, a city of 300,000. So for it to be there and the whole world coming to one place, and that's the thing I always say, the coolest part of it, I think, was the fact that the whole world was there. Like the market, which you saw in the background of our set, if you'd go there on any day, you'd have thousands of people from all these 32 different countries, which is just, to me, the coolest thing. The entire world was really there, and I'd never seen that in an event. I've covered Olympics before, but the world doesn't really come to Olympics. Maybe families of the athletes, a few people from different places, but the world really comes to a World Cup, and to have them all in one place was sensational. So yeah, it was an incredible experience.
So other than the Canadian fans, because obviously Canadian fans are the best, what country were you like impressed by that fan base?
Well, Brazil was staying at our hotel, and so that was the fan base I got the most experience with, because every night, essentially, and particularly the night of Brazil games, there would be 1,000 to 2,000 of them outside our hotel with all sorts of musical instruments going all night long. So they were the ones I was sort of kind of exposed to the most, and they were fantastic. So I would say the Brazilians, and I was kind of rooting for them. I mean, I was like everybody else, kind of rooting for Messi, but I would have liked to see Brazil win, because I do think they play the most beautiful football. And yeah, so now when I say they're in our hotel, it's not like Neymar's in the room next to me. They cordoned off an area of the hotel, and we never saw any of the players, but the fans were everywhere.
Well, I definitely enjoyed watching you cover that. I mean, especially like you said, like I don't watch Bundesliga or the Premier League or anything like that. I'll catch the odd MLS game, but international soccer is fun to watch. So it was nice to see a familiar face and not some a British guy or somebody
Well,
trying to dumb the game down for us. It was nice to have somebody that I could relate to talking to me.
No, nobody dumbs it down better than me. No,
not what I meant, but yeah.
No, it's okay.
First and last appearance for James Duthie on the show.
No, I don't take it that way whatsoever. In fact, I actually take that in many ways as my job, and I'm sure there's some diehard soccer fans that didn't want me there, right? That only want soccer commentators there, and I totally understand that too. But I think the World Cup, especially a World Cup with Canada, attracts a lot of fans that don't watch the game a lot, right? And so I take that as part of my job, and you have to walk a fine line. You have to be knowledgeable enough to ask the right questions, but I think you also have to not dumb it down. That's not probably the proper phrase, even though there's truth and elements to it. But I think you have to ask the questions and make sure your analysts talk in a way that's understandable for that diehard soccer fans appreciate, but also new fans to the game would appreciate. So that was constantly on my mind the whole tournament, right? Is to make this relatable to, hockey fans who are just turning in because it's Canada or whatever, but still to appease the diehard soccer fans too. And that's always the fine line you walk when you do something like that. So trust me, I took no offense to what you said.
Oh, good. Thank God. Yeah. Thank God. Well, burning bridges here at Average Jocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we move on from that, I mean, you've covered the World Cup, which you said, and I agree with, is one of the largest tournaments in the world, and probably the most recognizable sport universally. And you've covered the Olympics, you covered the World Juniors. What's one sporting event that you would like to cover before you retire?
Somebody asked me this while we were having beers at the World Cup, and I didn't have an answer yet because the World Cup was the number one thing on my list. And so I'm going to have to come up with another one. I mean, a World Cup in your country 4 years from now would be pretty darn cool. But and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, like I've done everything, because I haven't. But most of the stuff that I always wanted to do, I've been lucky enough to be able to do. And so, man, maybe it would be, F1, which is probably the fastest growing popularity sport in the world. And I was not into it, but my daughter's boyfriend's really into it, and he's getting me into it. And I've watched the Netflix series and everything. So, maybe an F1 race like the Grand Prix of Montreal.
Just my 2 cents. I would love to see you do what Joe Rogan does. Post match, just super sweaty, guys bloody, middle of the octagon, James Duthie in there. I feel
that, or do what Bruce Buffer does before the fight.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Anytime
I've never gotten into UFC. I appreciate it and everything like that, but I have not gotten into it, and I would be. I'm also smart enough to know when I don't know anything, and I don't know anything about UFC. But back in the day, like when I was younger, boxing was much bigger, right? Boxing is UFC sort of kickboxing's ass, but I was big into boxing when I was young. So if you'd asked me that question 20 years ago, I would have said a title fight, the heavyweight championship of the world, when back in the days when Mike Tyson was around, or when it really mattered. But it doesn't really matter much anymore, it seems to. So yeah, maybe UFC at some point. I don't know what else really. I've never hosted a World Series or anything like that, but baseball doesn't move me the way it used to, so that's not high on my list. So I'm gonna have to come. I'll try to come up with one by the end of the interview. But there's nothing like pressing in my head now that I have to do this before I'm done.
That's fair. This is one of the interviews for me where I was just. I've said on numerous episodes now. Every time we got like a former player on or something, it's special. It's nice. It's cool to hear the stories. But I was never an athlete. Like I was an average jock at best.
Yeah.
I played center, and that was the only time I touched the football. He was our QB.
Yeah.
And
where was that? This is high school?
This is high school.
We didn't go any farther than that,
Yeah,
James.
yeah.
I had one season of my flag football league around here, and that was enough for me.
Yeah.
So high school was the same thing. Glory days in high school. I went to Gloucester and Ottawa, and we only had 23 players, I think, my senior year in high school. So I went both ways. And
you're playing. You have to.
You got to be.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be. I literally up to grade 13 back in my day.
Yeah.
I thought I had a legitimate chance to probably not play in the NFL, but play in the CFL. Like I was somewhat delusional because I was 5'10", 145 pounds at that time.
Sounds like me.
White cornerback with mediocre speed.
Yeah, I got through my head pretty quick. I wasn't making it anywhere. And I strictly shifted my focus to the TSN panel being my heroes. And my mom being a teacher, it took a lot of convincing, but allowed me to stay home every year at trade deadline day. And it was like my one fake sick, I'll call it in, you're good. You can stay home with the boys. And I would always have like a text chain of all my buddies. And I would text pretty much word for word, where you guys going? And it'd be like, breaking trade. And then it's like going this way, going that way. So I always idolized you guys. So this to me is like my World Cup.
Oh, thank you.
The only thing better is
nice
if like your Instagram video. What is it? Is what car? Oh God!
Oh,
I watched it.
The Lincoln Nautilus thing.
Yeah, and then you switch over. The only thing you can do better is if you turn your camera and Bobby was sitting next to you. That's the only way this is getting better for me.
Yeah. No, thank you. By the way, I think I thought of your answer. I think I would. This is not an event because I've covered a million of them, but I would like to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup and cover that because it's been forever now. And there was a run back in the early 2000s where they were in the finals every year, right? Like, Edmonton was there, and then Ottawa was there, and so on and so forth. But in Vancouver in 2011 Cup final against Boston,
and Montreal in 2020.
Yes, sorry. But I would love to see and cover a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup before I'm done. So, and as for trade deadline, you see, it's a sucker. I should hate you for this, buddy, because That's why we have to be on the air for 12 hours every year. I'm like, can we just do this for 5 or 6 hours? And they say, no, too many people
You know
watch.
what? I will endorse the 5 or 6 hours. My ass is numb by hour 3.
Yeah, mine too.
I always like the who is it that would normally like live tweet some photos of somebody grabbing pizza or like hurrying up commercial break to go to the bathroom. That's pretty much what it's like at my house too during the commercial break on those days. Only make what I can cook in the 3 minutes that you're going to commercial while I'm.
Well, it's funny. My theory on trade deadline is that part of the reason it does so well, I think, is not just for people looking for the information, but because people tune in to see actually how we're going to fill all those hours. And it's kind of like rubbernecking at an accident scene, right?
Yeah.
You go, how are these idiots going to talk for 10 hours straight? And I think some of the funnest times on TradeCentre is when we get a little loopy and run out of things to say, which happens quite often. So, yeah, there's a sickness that you guys have in watching that show.
Yeah,
it kind of celebrates the sickness that Canadian hockey fans have, don't you think?
Yeah, it is, and whatever, I'll embrace it. I will watch as long as you are on.
Hey, we love you for it, you know.
Yeah. Well, staying with the trade deadline, I know there's been a few years where I've been watching, and you guys call some players, and the players are a little surprised to hear that they've been traded because they haven't, either their agent hasn't got to them or something like that.
Right.
I think it was, I don't know if it's Anthony Stewart. I can't remember. I remember you guys called.
I think it was Chris
Stewart. Yes, thank you. You guys called him, and you were like, "So how does it feel to get traded?" And he was like, "Well, I haven't talked to my agent yet." So, like, other than that, like, have you had any other like times where you called players and been like, and they're like, "Well, I don't know yet. I'll call you back," or?
Well, that was I think that was the moment because Gino Retta actually in the background makes a lot of those calls for us, and we sort of, he gets numbers from myself and Bob and Dregs and the numbers he has, and so in the case of Chris, he got a hold of him right away and said, "Hey, can you come on with James on TradeCentre?" And he said, "Sure," and he didn't know yet. And I didn't know. Like, when I assume every time, like, it just comes to me, like the producer talks in my ear and just says, "Hey, we got Chris Stewart. He's just been traded to," in this case, it was Minnesota, I think, or to be traded.
I think
Buffalo to Minnesota, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so I assume he knows. I'm like, "What do you think of the trade?" And he goes, "What is it?" And I go, "Okay." it was
pack your bags, you're going to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's funny because everybody in the studio is laughing, as your reaction would be, which is a natural reaction. But at the same time, I felt a little bit, guilty afterwards, because there are families involved here and wives and kids that get pulled out of school. So I try to always think of that at the same time. But he took it, incredibly well, and he's like, "Okay, no problem. I'm off to Minnesota." I think quite often we'll get guys right afterwards before they've really had time to think about it. But that's the only time I can remember that the guy that I actually had to break the trade to the guy on the air. And so that was one of the that was one of the all timers on TradeCentre.
I mean, only one time in the amount of years you've been on trade deadline day. I mean, that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, it's not bad. I
mean, that's almost like what Billy Bean did to, or I guess Brad Pitt did to Jonah Hill's character in Moneyball, where you got to practice calling these guys.
Yeah,
call them in. You've been traded.
Yeah.
So you've also got a taste of what it's like to be a GM.
That's right. I think that. Oh, by the way, I mean, there have been definitely other guys who have found out that they've been traded on TradeCentre. I think that happens regularly. Maybe not so much anymore. I think the teams are. TradeCentre is not what it used to be in the sense of breaking trades, right? It's not like Bob McKenzie or Darren Drager or Pierre LeBrun, whoever breaks all the deals anymore. The vast majority of time now, teams send it out on their Twitter, whatever. And I don't think the breaking of trades has become as important as just, the analyzing and so on that comes afterwards. But, there's been numerous times where guys have found out that they have been traded. And, Bob used to be so connected. I can remember there was one year early on where, quite often it's the assistant general managers and the scouts and stuff that are feeding the information to the insiders.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these teams are in a room, and I think one year, so the GM's on the phone, on the speakerphone, making a deal. The assistant GM texts Bob. Bob goes on air and says the deal, and the call's not even over. So the GM is sitting there on the phone watching this TV screen, and the trade that he's just done 30 seconds ago is coming up on the screen, and he's like, what the?
Looking around the room, see who's got their phone out. Yeah,
that's the power of Bob McKenzie, I think.
That's awesome. Actually, Jimmy was telling me, because I was telling him the other day, he's written a couple books with Bob now.
Yeah.
And he's like, Bob has two phones, even though he's retired. And he has one that it's hockey phone, one is family phone, but that hockey phone can go off constantly.
Yeah.
And it just, again, kind of what you said, Bob McKenzie.
I think he might have turned in the hockey phone.
Oh.
Bob is Bob is still so awesome at the World Juniors and when he's on trade deadline or whatever, but he is focused on his retirement now, so he does not make the calls that he
the Bobby Margarita phone is
that's right. He's got one phone for Bobby Margarita now and one phone for family.
So talk about a couple of guys that should be retired now. Jaromir Jagr now becomes the oldest player to score in the Czech League, assisted by 40-year-old Thomas Plekanec. I mean, we're not at that age yet, Adam.
No,
but I've kind of retired myself at 27 from men's league sports. You, James, had a little lengthier career. You're saying retiring from flag football at about 50.
Right.
Like, when are these guys just going to hang it up?
Well, Jagr is just a freak and always has been. I mean, he really is retired, I guess, when he owns the team and they were short a player or something when he came out. But that guy is – the funny thing is I could see Ovechkin being like Jagr. Like, I have no doubt now he's going to break the record and smash it because that whole, Russian machine never breaks down thing is true, right? For that guy to play – a pretty physical game of hockey for his entire career and basically never be hurt is ludicrous. And so there's just, I don't know, something in the water over in Russia and the Czechs.
Fear.
So I could see Ovi playing till 45 or something like that and still chipping in 25 goals. But Jagr was a freak and, really became a physical, like into his, at 45, he was the guy that was showing up at the gym at, midnight and working out till 2 a.m. at the rink. So I don't know that we'll see too many like him again, but that is really unbelievable because it's a young man's game now, right? The peak players used to peak at 30, and I almost think now like 25 almost is your peak, right? Like 20, if you're not a superstar by like 23, 24, 25, it's probably not going to happen. Those are the guys that are running the league right now. So, man, more power to these guys that can hang around till 40 or in Jagr's case 50.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah, as long as he keeps bringing back the lamb chops, he can play at least 60. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about the World Juniors since that's probably fresh on your mind. How beautiful is watching that game? And I mean, I know we talked, Sidney Crosby, Nate McKinnon, big guys from the Nova Scotia area. How cool is it to be out there for the World Juniors?
I think I tweeted this. It was one of my favorites ever, and I don't want to pass judgment now. Maybe I'll do that when I retire. Sometimes you need time to think back on these things. But if it's not Ottawa and in 2009 or whatever, the Eberle year, for numerous reasons, my hometown, and this one are probably 1 and 1A as my favorites ever. First of all, to be back in a smaller town, not this, Halifax is a city, but you know what I mean, like junior sized rink and everything. They were starving for it because it hadn't been there in 20 years. Just great hockey people. I'd never been to a World Junior where everybody was talking about it. Every restaurant you went into, every coffee shop, it's all they were talking about the entire week. They were there for the relegation games, the crappy games, the great games. And to have that quality of hockey, to have so many upsets and then overtime in the quarters, USA in the semis, overtime for the gold medal, an 8-7 bronze medal game. When you put all those things together, it's a hard tournament to top. And to watch what Bedard did, I'm sure everybody's sick of us talking about Bedard, but
I'm not. You can talk about it.
Yeah.
it was unbelievable. Like, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that he's 17. Like, if he was 19 and did that, it would be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's 17 and could actually come back for 2 more World Juniors is nuts. Like, look at what Connor McDavid is now, and he did not dominate at all at 17. He was really good, but he did not dominate whatsoever. And nor did Sidney Crosby at 17, nor did pretty much anybody else you can mention here. And Bedard just dominated. So again, I'm not saying he's going to be better than McDavid. You know, McDavid has things that is a unicorn and that nobody will have, but I'm just fascinated to see what he will be. Because he's 17, and maybe he's not the fastest, and he's not the biggest, and he's not the strongest, and all these other things, but he just figures out a way to beat people. Mm-hmm. And that's the greatest intangible you could ever have. And so I can't wait to see what kind of NHLer he's going to be.
Do you think, like, and it's different, I find, watching it on TV compared to live, but being a smaller forward, and I mean, you know, the way he skates and the way he handles the puck does look like a young Sidney Crosby, does look like a Connor McDavid, the way he can walk through people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find his size difference compared to those two players? Like, do you notice that at all on the ice? Like,
no, because he's big. He's big. The thing about hockey players, they're big. They have big asses and big legs.
Yeah.
Right. That, like, Crosby, the first time I saw him in person, that's what freaked me out. I mean, I'd seen him as a junior, but to see him, you know, as a rookie, I think in the NHL or his second year, they used to call him Creature. That was his nickname in Pittsburgh the first couple of years because his ass and his legs were just like this. And Bedard has that already. I'm not saying he's Crosby size, but I think when Bedard's 23 or something, he's going to have that. And that's where so much of it comes from in hockey. So I'm very similar, I think, probably to Crosby in size. And he could still grow, right? He's 17. He could grow an inch or two. So I thought Kelly Rudy said this on Hockey Night in Canada, and we were saying the same thing in Halifax. I think the best comparable to me right now is probably Mitch Marner. I think he'll be better than Mitch Marner, which says a lot because Mitch Marner is a really good player. But just his shiftiness, the way he moves, his ability with the puck, I think that's the close that doesn't look that much like Crosby, that much like McDavid. There's little similarities here and there.
Yeah.
You know, shoots the puck a little like Austin Matthews, but he moves like Marner in my estimation. And I think he'll be a better version of Mitch Marner, which again is a heck of a compliment, I think. He's got a way better shot. So,
yeah.
I'm putting Mitch Marner with Austin Matthews' shot and goal scoring ability. I'm sorry, I'm just using Leafs here for
no, that's okay.
Leafs,
but you put out a great short. I think it was right after the tournament, and it was talking to his I guess his parents' house, their neighbors.
Oh yeah,
him shooting like that was if you haven't watched that, you need to that was a great short, and kind of a testament. At one point, he really hurt his wrist, and just he busted one wrist.
Yeah. So he didn't want to stop playing hockey, so he was shooting pucks with one wrist, his opposite wrist, I think.
Yeah.
And he was like firing backhands over the net one-handed, which to me makes no sense whatsoever, right?
Yeah, I had a hard time lifting the puck in grade 10. Like backhand with one hand. Where
it's crazy. It's crazy. But the one thing I would say when you talk about, you know, McDavid, Crosby, whatever, look at anybody who makes the NHL. To me, it's an incredible accomplishment. That's why I'm always. When we sit there and carve, sorry if you can hear squeaking, it's my dog. Hold on.
You know what? That's okay. You are not the first. I can hear my dog walking upstairs right now.
So that's my dog with a cone head right now.
What a cutie!
Yeah. Because
you know what? I recognize both those pops.
Yes, and he quite enjoys the squeaky ball, so I'll try to keep him occupied. But
that's okay.
Anybody who makes it to the NHL has to be incredibly driven. right? You know, that whole 10,000 hours of practice to get there, and plus you have to have a ton of talent. But I think there's something different and similar between like the Crosbys, you know, going back to Gretzky's, the McDavids. But let's just take this generation. So just say Crosby, McDavid, Bedard. They all are so driven and so competitive. There was a story about Sid, I remember. His agent told me that his agent had him over for dinner, and he was playing checkers with his agent's 8-year-old son. And the son beat him in checkers. And Crosby basically, the second he lost, flipped the board like across the room. And instantly, you know, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and cleaned it all up. But in that instant, like he hated losing so bad, even to a kid in checkers. And those guys have that, and Connor Bedard has that. And it's just this crazy competitiveness that and desire to be the best. And I, you know, it sounds silly to say desire to be the best because you think all players have it, but there's another level of it. And I think that's what, you know, one of the many things that separates the so-called generational players. And I think he has that.
And like a big thing too, I noticed with Bedard too, like, you know, they just won, they were interviewing him, and they're I can't remember who was interviewing. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Kenzie and
Kenzie Lalonde. She asked him, you know, about him, and he said, "It's not about me, it's about my team." You know, right there, you know, a lot of guys would still answer the question and then talk about his team, but right away he said, you know, it's not about me, it's about my team. And
that's incredible maturity for a 17-year-old, don't you think?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
And that was, I'll tell you guys, that was brewing the entire tournament. Like I could feel it basically from the day he got 7 points against Germany, which was the second game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It became about him, and I could see his discomfort growing. And we did another interview where we walked along the harbor there, and I could tell he was already getting uncomfortable with every question being about him. And he also didn't like that all the other players on the team were being asked about him. Like every question Shane Wright was being asked was about Bedard, and Brennan Othman was about Bedard. And Bedard, I could see his discomfort with that because, you know, all these guys are superstars in their own junior town. And so I had to pull him aside and say, hey, I totally respect this, you know, that you don't want to talk about yourself. And when you go back to the rink and you want to defer in your scrums, no problem. But for the next 15 minutes, I need you to talk about yourself with me. And he was really good about it. But I think that no more. I think that it is impressive for a 17-year-old to, in that moment of just winning the medal, to say, hey, I want this to be about the guys. And I really think in many ways, you know, there's part of me that says if Bedard scored that golden goal, it would have been the perfect ending to the tournament. But there's another part of me that thinks I'm really glad that it was somebody else. And basically that there were other heroes those last two games. And I really think that Bedard is probably really happy about it. That he's probably happier for Dylan Guenther and you know, Shane Wright for getting that big goal than he would have been for him doing it. Because if he'd have scored the golden goal, then all we would ever remember from this tournament was Connor Bedard, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was really happy to just be one of the guys on that night.
That's I agree with that, especially like, you know, like you said, all the guys that played so well in that tournament. Unfortunately, you know, not unfortunately that it was behind Bedard, because they did still talk about everybody, but like, you know, it's just
yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, I was thrilled whenever my name was in the local paper.
Yeah. And then there's the side column in the sports section of ball hockey.
Yeah,
you know?
leading penalty minutes. It was fantastic.
Assist was 2 points in our ball hockey league, so that's the only time I passed the puck. So
yeah,
right.
I mean, maybe somebody who isn't as humble as Connor Bedard, though. Last week would have been Alexander Ovechkin. After scoring a hat trick on our beloved Habs. Followed up by taking a nice selfie with their moms on the mom trip, just to add a little salt to the wound.
He took a selfie with the Habs moms.
You didn't see this?
No, I think I must have missed it just because I was at the juniors, probably.
Okay, I will email this to you right now.
I can imagine the shot. But I love that, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just,
I think it's great. I think that's
the
hilarious.
moms must have asked, right?
Well, they had to, or it's very I don't know, cheeky of them, I guess.
I love it. Even if it was against the Habs, I still love it.
It's great.
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't
great.
really matter to me.
There, I just sent that to you. Yeah, it's
I like the Yuppie shot, by the way, back there. I was a big Yuppie guy my entire life. So the Expos were
Yuppie or Habs Yuppie.
Expos Yuppie. The Expos were my. Despite what I said about baseball earlier, the Expos were my true love, and they occupied my life from like age 10 to 16. I just lived for the Expos, off season, in season, every single game. I love them. I would take the bus down. My dad would drop me at the bus stop, and I'd take the bus down to Montreal to watch games. And then the strike year, lockout year, and then the moving just crushed my love of baseball completely. But I wasn't. So living in Ottawa, Cornwall, I guess, would be sort of different, where you're closer to Montreal, so it's probably mostly Habs fans, right? Maybe some Sens fans now.
Honestly, it's a mix. Honestly, really,
it's tough though, because the Sens came in what, 92?
Yeah, around there. Yeah.
So you have a lot of families. For me, grandparents were Habs fans. And then my dad was a Habs fan, raised me a Habs fan, and I feel like it's the same thing with the Leafs in the Habs. So unless there's people that converted when the Sens came in, I feel like it's heavy Montreal, Toronto.
Yeah, so same as Ottawa. Ottawa was like that, where it was Leafs and Habs 100%, and I kind of rebelled against both when I was a kid, and chose the Chicago Blackhawks as my team, and then that was my team when I was a little kid, and then I switched to the New York Islanders because I liked Denny Potvin, came out of Ottawa, and followed them, and that worked out well because they won all those cups. But yeah, I was never a Habs fan. Didn't hate them or anything like that, but I didn't like the Habs. But I was a huge Expos fan.
Well, that's fair. I hope that they do get a baseball team back, because I would like to see Montreal get a new mascot, give Yuppie back, and
they technically have that the one, the new one, what's his name, Metal. Is that his name?
Yeah, get rid of him.
I think that's his name. He wears the baby blue. Ever since he's been around with those baby blue jersey, Montreal has given up 21 goals and 4
goals. They haven't won.
Yeah, well, Montreal doesn't win. Let's be real.
I don't think that the goal is to win. The management may not say it out loud, but I think they're going to go in hard on. That was the other interesting. The other interesting thing about the World Juniors was, there was a lot of scouts and GMs and assistant GMs in our hotel, and I would see them at breakfast most days. And without using the tank word, even though I just did, the pursuit of Bedard is going to be intense. And
for sure.
There was no one from Montreal that said anything to me, so I'm not reporting anything. But I think Montreal will
take it to the bank here, according to James Duthie.
No, Montreal is going to be. I suspect Montreal is going to be down there in the bottom 5 and make some deals of veteran players.
I hope so. I think they're at 7 right now. The article you guys had out while I was doing groceries, I was reading it while pushing the cart, and had, I think, Montreal at 7th in the lottery draft standings.
Yeah, I bet they'll be top 5. But like I said, they're going to have some competition, because there are some teams that are just going to tank so hard.
Yeah, do whatever they can to get those.
Which will be fun for us around trade deadline if teams are trying to unload veterans, right? But I think they might do it before trade deadline because they want to tank faster, right?
I hope so. You know what? Fair. Move Jake Allen and.
There's a lot of guys from Montreal that I'd like to see go, but we're here sitting talking to James Duthie, and they're the managers. So,
well, I think talking to James.
Yeah, Duthie. I think so too. Yeah, less
gray hair.
I mean, come on, dude, look at all this gray hair. But like you said, you've seen a lot of guys come through like sport and stuff like that. Like, who was when you first started doing the sports reporting stuff like that? Who was the first player or athlete or even co-host that you fangirled over?
Geeked out?
Yeah, geeked out. There, go. I'm trying to think of a different term instead of.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Um, it's a great question. The first one that pops into my mind. So I started at TSN in '98, and I did local sports in Ottawa. So I had gotten to interview, Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, a few people there in scrums, being the local Ottawa reporter. But I think the first time I really lost it was, football was probably my favorite sport, right? If you'd asked me, hockey was right there, but football was a touch above for me. And I'm a big Niners fan, you might know.
Yes, sir. Let's go, James.
Yeah,
I knew I liked you for a reason. Yes.
And I was really passionate. I was probably more passionate about the Niners than I was any other sports team back then after the Expos. So when the Expos were gone, I think the Niners really started to fill that void for me. And Ronnie Lott was my favorite player of all time. I have the only two jerseys I've ever owned in any sport are Tim Raines Expos and Ronnie Lott 49ers jersey. I still kept it's the only thing I kept is I have a Ronnie Lott jersey from the Niners.
We'll send you an average Jocks jersey. We'll copy at the back. Send me your
I will
favorite
cherish
number.
it. I will cherish it. And all my passwords, I should give this away, were always had 42
yeah,
at the
SIN number, who you bank with.
Yeah.
Everything had 42. I always chose 42, like I pick lottery numbers no matter what. So I get to TSN, and in my first, probably a month or two into my time at TSN, one of the producers calls me and says, Ronnie Lott's coming to town and, doing this thing for like NFL Canada. And we got a chance to interview him. Do you want to do it? And I freaked out. And I can still remember, I kept staring at his finger. I don't know if you guys know the legendary Ronnie Lott getting his finger cut off. He didn't want to miss a game. But there was some sort of maintenance or renovation going on in the next studio. And so this jackhammer kept going, and we kept having to interrupt the interview. We only had, 15 minutes with Ronnie Lott. He didn't know who the hell I was. So it was just like, I'm sure he wanted to get the hell out of there and move on with his day. And I was starting to get so nervous because, sorry, Mr. Lott, we'll have to stop that and start it again because of the stupid noise in the next studio. And I could see the sweat starting to build up on my brow. Like this whole Ronnie Lott interview is going to go to hell. But he was really classy about it. And I think that's the first time I was really, really geeked out or fangirling, like you say, because he was my guy my entire life. And you know what? The year before that, I was working in Vancouver the year before I came to TSN, and I got sent on an assignment. I was working as a news reporter in Vancouver, and I got sent to do something at Disneyland in Anaheim. And the Niners were playing the Packers in the NFC Championship game, and I made a side trip to San Francisco to see the game, and got a field pass. The Niners got their asses kicked, Steve Young, by Brett Favre and the Packers, but Jerry Rice wasn't playing that game. He was probably my second favorite guy to Ronnie Lott. And so we went into I remember my cameraman had no batteries left, so the camera was dead. But he said, let's go in the dressing room and do some interviews. And he's like, well, my camera's dead. I said, I don't care. Let's just fake it. I just want to go in there and do interviews, right? So he had a dead camera. And Jerry Rice hadn't played, but he was standing there in his suit. And I'm like, screw this. I got a chance to interview Jerry Rice. I'm going to do it. And so I walked up to him and I said, Jerry, can I get a word with you? And he said, F off, man. Talk to somebody who plays. I was crushed. I was devastated.
Oh, that's great.
And you know what? Like, it's not like he was being an ass. I mean, a bit of an ass, but more so, I think it's the fact he was just he's another one of these guys that we're talking about, ultra competitive. Oh, and even though he hadn't played, he was really mad they lost, right? And so I was just some punk ass who came up to him and shoved the camera in his face. So it didn't ruin my adoration of Jerry Rice, but I really walked away with my tail between my legs after that.
That's great.
You know what? That's awesome. The battery's dead faking. I would have probably did the same play.
Yeah, well, you're already there, right? You might as well just keep going.
You know, the funny thing, subscript to that, Brent Jones was the tight end for the 49ers then. Pretty good tight end. Played a long time in the NFL, won a whole bunch of Super Bowls. So he was there, and he just come out of the shower and sat down in front of his locker. And I'm like, okay, let's do Brent Jones. So I run over to my cameraman, and I think the other like the real reporters, all the San Francisco and national reporters, were all around Steve Young. So I get around Brent Jones and I'm like, Brent, you talked about this maybe being your last season. What are you feeling right now? And he's like, well, yeah, you know what? This is it. I'll announce it right now. I'm going to retire. I don't think you want to announce it right now because I don't have a camera that works, and I'm from a Vancouver news station. So maybe you want to wait till everybody else comes over here. But I always remember Brent Jones announced his retirement to me with no functional camera.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's still a great story to have though in your back pocket.
Yeah.
So, wow. Speaking of, all-stars for you guys. I mean, I don't know if you watch any of the competition, but Jeff Marek was.
I'm watching them right now at the Leafs game. If you see me looking up, I'm just trying to keep pace of what's going on in the Leafs game.
That's okay. That's okay. Are they winning?
I think they scored, but I've been paying most of my attention to you guys.
That's fair. That's fair. I got a few guys playing in the game, so. The All-Star game in Florida this year. They were saying there's some interesting ideas floating around. One of them, saucing some frozen hamburger patties to some alligators as being one of the skills competition stuff.
Just can't take that seriously. If that's actually gonna happen, that'd be great.
In like a dunk tank where you gotta shoot the puck at the thing to try and dunk a teammate or something. Like, are you a fan of those fanatics?
Yeah, I don't care. First of all, I'll say I'm not taking full credit for this, but back in the day, I pushed really hard for them to do the shootout. The show-off shootout, whatever. I don't know what the heck they call it now. Like, I always thought they should do something like the slam dunk contest.
Yeah,
and pushed really hard for the league that year and to do the shootout, which has had mixed success. Some years it's been good. I'm not even sure if they still do it. Do they?
They do. Last year, who was it? Zegras came out as
the average Jocks.
Yeah, no, average Joe.
My bad.
Average Joe.
Yeah, sorry.
If he came out in a fat suit looking like me, I would have been fired up.
Yeah, but it's the fact that it's still around means it's at least there's been moments, right, where they can show some personality, and that's what I always thought. So I'm not gonna anything they do. To me, if people should not get worked up about All-Star. It is what it is. It's silly, and I think it probably should be silly. It should be for kids. I remember when I was a kid, I thought All-Star game was the second biggest game of the year, right? The Stanley Cup final. Yeah. And then I grew up and realized none of these players give a crap, and they all go out and get drunk and stay out till 5 o'clock in the morning the night before the game, right?
Yeah.
So I think they should do whatever that might be entertaining, and they'll fail sometimes, but I just, there are hockey players that do have personality, and there's more of them, I think, in the league these days. So any opportunity they have to show personality, I'm good for. I really don't care. Will I watch it? It's one of those things I'll watch if I'm home.
I always watch the skills competition. The All-Star game doesn't really interest me.
Yeah, the 3-on-3. Are they still doing the 3-on-3?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, it's to me, it's I could take it or leave it. But so whatever they want to do that's entertaining, whatever they want to try, they can try.
I got a 2-part follow-up on that.
Yeah.
They brought back the vote-in of whoever you want. You type in the name. Last time they did that, John Scott went to the NHL All-Star game. So if you, James Duthie, had your way, who's one guy that wouldn't be on like an all-star radar if you could send to the game? Who would it be? And you know what?
Somebody who's playing in the league?
I won't even keep it to that. All time. If you could send one person that probably doesn't deserve to be at an all-star game to an all-star game, who would it be?
Jeff O'Neill.
Love it.
Love it.
Out of retirement.
Are we talking
that
pre-earring Jeff O'Neill or post-earring?
No, I want the full earring sticking out of the helmet. I want everything.
That'd be great.
So, O-Dog, shoot your shot, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't even think of a player in the league. That's the sad thing about hockey. I can't think of anybody who's wildly entertaining that's probably not worthy of an all-star, and which is, again, a problem with the game. But
I mean, we might be biased. I'd say Arbor Jacki.
yeah, and you know what? If they did that vote, I think he's got a chance.
Good, great. He's got a heck of a shot.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he'd win the hardest shot, but he's got a heck of a shot.
I mean, I remember computer class back in the day when it was all votes in.
Yeah.
And they're like, last 20 minutes of the class, do whatever you want. I'm on NHL.com. Smith.
Right. Yeah, no, he'd be a great choice. I heard somebody mention him the other day, and he's such a great story that I would love that.
Yeah, and you know what? For the shootout, he could wear his Costco vest.
Yeah.
Second follow-up question to that. We talked. You already had a great idea with the shootout, so we're going to give you full credit.
No, I don't. I want to make sure I don't get full credit for that. I was one of many
75% credit to my man James Duthie. Yeah. Do you have any other great ideas up your pipeline?
No, I gave up on that.
I'll make it more interesting. James, if your next idea ends up in the NHL All-Star game, I will get a tattoo of your face.
It's a great question. I haven't really tried to even be creative with it anymore because I guess I stopped caring a few years ago about the All-Star game. I used to host that fantasy draft. The first couple of years they did that, when the players drafted each other and drafted the teams. And I don't know if you remember back, Phil Kessel.
Poor cheeseburger Phil.
Poor Phil. I love it though.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I'm all for them trying anything. I don't have any wondrous idea to save the All-Star game. I think it's always going to be what it is. The players don't care. Nobody's going to hit anybody. People have thrown out this idea of, putting some big cash on it. So you won, a couple $1 million or whatever, but which might matter to some rookie who's making minimum salary, but to most of these guys, even that wouldn't matter, right? And it would come across looking, pretty greedy if it was huge money. So, like I said, I think it is what it is. No matter what format you try, there's going to be flaws with it, and it's basically a schmooze for corporate sponsors, and hopefully some kids at home get a kick out of it. And I think that's all you're ever going to get out of it.
Do you think that they would get more interest if they turn to what kind of baseball's doing now, and even the NBA, and kind of get maybe like a celebrity game going? Like, I'd be more interested. Maybe get you, O-Dog, and maybe Dave Poulin on a line.
Well, you could get Biebs. You could get Biebs out there. He'd play probably, right?
Biebs. I'm sure Cabby would lace him up. Jerry D.
Yeah. I mean, some of those NBA ones, you get the odd, like, pretty big name, and then you get a few guys who are like, what is this guy doing? I haven't seen him since he was a child star on, like, an 80s show. But I could dig a celebrity game if they could get enough guys to play.
Would you play?
Cuba Gooding Jr. plays in LA.
Yeah.
Would I play?
Yeah.
So here's my story on hockey. I was never great. I lived in BC till I was 8. So when I moved to Ottawa, I'd never skated before. I was 8 years old. And I was well behind everybody. So I played house league for 3 years and learned to skate. I had those ugly, like, Micron mascot, hard, I always say it's like a pigeon wearing like work boots. That's what I look like. And so I only played rep my last year of hockey. And then I was 14 and then discovered girls and quit. And I went and played like, whatchamacallit, intramurals in university for a year.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I'm pretty good still. Like, I've actually gotten better. Like, in my 6 years not playing hockey, I guess I've developed physically, and I was actually scoring a lot of goals. And I'm like, I'm pretty good at this game. And then I stopped playing and stopped, like, skating. I had a bunch of kids and was moving around, and I didn't play again basically at all until I play a little ball hockey once in a while. And then I played a father-son game when my son was like 8 or 9. And, like, a lot of the dads were really good. And I realized how crap I was. And I actually wiped out and fell on the captain of the team and hurt him. And I vowed that was the end. I haven't played hockey since. It traumatized me so much that I said, if I can play in a father-son game and wipe out on top of the captain of the team and, like, knock him out for a week, that my career is over.
And you know what? That's actually how Connor Bedard hurt his wrist.
Basically, probably, yeah.
Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
It's actually
so
funny.
That was it. I was done, and my hockey career is over. And I will not brag about hockey. I'll brag about my flag football exploits, but I'll never brag about my hockey exploits because I just frankly was never that good.
Well, you know what? We'll put you behind the bench. Celebrity coach, James.
That I would do.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, this is one question I have to definitely ask. When you guys made the panel hangover, whose idea was that, and how did that come about? Obviously, the movie being so popular and stuff like that, but how did that come about? I know you guys shot it in LA because I believe I think it's not.
Yeah. Film, so, I mean, I'll take.
Taking credit again. I love it.
I'll take most of the credit for that one.
I love this guy.
I do have a warped. I have a bit of a warped mind. I don't get to do as many of those things as I used to, but I always liked really dumb. I grew up on David Letterman, like the old David Letterman when he was on NBC, and like he was one of the first guys who really brought dumb humor, I think, into the world, and I was fixated on him. And from like 10 years old, I would watch every show he did, and so CSN has been very kind to let me do stupid things over the years. In this particular case, one of our producers, I believe it was Bill Dotson, said we had a guy who worked at the station named Rick, who unfortunately passed away quite suddenly a few years later. But he looked like Zach Galifianakis. I can't say it.
Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach Galifianakis. And he was a bit of a dead ringer. And so Bill said, you should do like a hangover thing with him. And so he planted the idea. I give him full credit. And then I kind of ran with it and came up. Basically, it was like you had to write like a 4-minute script, and I had to figure out like how this would work and how to shoot an ending. And I remember I wanted Drager in it, and he didn't want to go. He's busy. And I kind of lied to him and said, hey, we'll have 2 days off in LA. It'll be really easy. And we only had actually like 24 hours there, and we shot the entire 24 hours basically. Wow. Like we flew into LA, got there like 4:00. There was a game that night, went to the game, went to these clubs after, shot the next day, flew home the next night. And so it was like whirlwind guerrilla cinematography, whatever you want to call it. So I had this whole story lined up about how we'd be like, the panel would be in LA and we'd lose one of the guys on the panel, just like The Hangover. Happened to be Aaron Ward at the time. And because we had a wild night in LA the night before the game, and we'd go talk to the Kings and I'd get them involved. I'm pretty good friends with Kopitar, who was playing along. But I didn't have an ending. Like, who was the guy who drugged us, right? And then it hit me one day that Daryl Sutter would be like perfect. But Daryl, I thought there was zero chance that Daryl Sutter would do this. I actually thought Daryl Sutter hated me because every time I interviewed him at the draft, which is like the one time I got to see him every year, like he'd never answer my questions. Like he'd give me like stone-faced looks. And then he always shook my hand when he got up and like almost broke my hand, because that's a Sutter handshake.
It's a farm strength.
Yeah. And I thought, this guy hates me. So I wrote the PR guy for the Kings, and it was a really weird email to write because I'm like, here's the deal. I'm doing a parody hangover. We're going to get drugged. We're going to blah, blah, blah. And I need Daryl Sutter to film a scene where he drugs my drink and make some comment about this. That's what you get. That's what the panel gets for picking the Canucks last year, whatever he said.
Yeah.
And I was like, we got no chance at this. And this was like 2 days before we're supposed to fly there, and I had no ending for the story. And the PR guy got back to me the next day and said, yeah, Daryl said yes. And I couldn't believe it.
That's awesome.
And it's still my favorite thing ever that he agreed to do that.
Yeah.
And so we flew, we did that and shot it. And the other thing is I tricked Matthew Perry into being in that thing. Not tricked him, but I knew exactly what I wanted Matthew Perry to say. Like I knew I was
another Ottawa boy, right?
Yeah.
Basically, we went to the rink and we said, who's here? What celebrities are here? And they said, well, there's Matthew Perry, there's Mary Hart, whatever. And they let us go try to interview them. So I go into Matthew Perry in the suite. I'm like, hey, we're doing a hangover parody. He knew TSN, thankfully. And he said, yeah, I'll play part of it. And I already knew what I wanted to do. I was in some drunken outfit and I was going to sit on his lap and I was going to say, Dregs, I wanted to purposely get his character wrong. I was going to say, it's Joey from Friends. It's Joey. But I didn't want to tell Matthew Perry that because I didn't know how he'd react. So I'm like, hey, thanks so much for being in this, Matthew. What could you say? Like, what could you say that would be funny? Like, what annoys you that people say to you that I could say to you that would be like, what annoys you? And he goes,
I don't like the question.
I don't like when people say, the guy from Friends. Hey, it's the guy from Friends. So I'm like, yeah, that would be good. But what if I said it's Joey from Friends? And he's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And so I totally fed him. But the fact that we got him in it, and then Mary Hart's husband, who's some billionaire, was like yelling at us because he didn't know what the hell we were doing. And the whole thing was a crazy 24 hours, but it turned out pretty good. The other funny postscript to that, and anyone who hasn't seen this, it's on YouTube. I was kind of playing a cross between the Ed Helms and the Bradley Cooper character. I look more like Ed Helms, but for the purpose of the thing. So I got the Mike Tyson tattoo on my face.
Yeah.
From Hangover 2. And I forgot, like, it was a tattoo that stayed on your face for like 3 days. Like, it was
oh my God.
Like one of those henna tattoos or whatever what do they call it. And so we went out for dinner after we were done filming that night before we were going to catch our plane. And we were at some swanky restaurant in Manhattan Beach. And I forgot I had the tattoo, and I'm wearing like, some preppy Lacoste shirt or something.
Yeah.
All these rich couples are at the restaurant staring at me. Right. And I'm just like, why are these people staring at me? And I went to the washroom and looked in the mirror and like, oh my God, I have a face tattoo. And
before it was cool. Before Post Malone. And
but anyway, thanks for remembering that, because we did that and we did a bunch of things with Luongo and the puck over glass video. Those are some of my favorite things we've done at TSN, because my bosses have been very good about letting me do really stupid things.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. And that's like prime, like Jay and Dan as well. Like you said, Luongo and Corey Schneider feud videos.
Yeah.
Those are gold. Just gold.
They're fun. It's, what the thing is, you try to tell yourself all the time, it is only sports. Like, we care about it dearly. We get really passionate. Sometimes we cry when our teams lose. But in the end, it's an escape, right? And if you can't have fun doing stuff with sports, then there's something wrong with you, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We'll talk about a little bit of a softer side of sports. And Chris Letang's dad passed away this week. And the Pens rerouted their game after playing in Arizona to go to Montreal, to be with him for his dad's funeral. I think that talks about kind of the camaraderie in the sport and kind of the softer side of it, where you were talking earlier about such a competitive edge that these guys have, and it's rah win at all costs. But like, to take a step out and to do that for your teammate, and like, they arrived in Montreal like 5 a.m. Like, just, I think it speaks to the human side and kind of brings it back down to earth that these guys are people too.
Yeah, and the term brotherhood gets used a lot, but I think it's really true in sports. You live with these guys, you spend more time probably with them than your family's cumulative hours over a year in a hockey season, right? And I think with most teams, that's really the case. And that doesn't surprise me whatsoever, right? They become your family for whatever time you're there. And, athletes for the most part are good people. There's bad apples everywhere, like there is in society. There's jerks everywhere. But for the most part, I think most of them are good people. And, hockey certainly has its issues, and they rose to the forefront over the last couple of years, and good thing. And people can talk about hockey culture, and there are some really bad sides to hockey culture that need to change. But there's also a lot of good sides, and there's a lot of good people in hockey. And what you're pointing out there is a really good example of it,
I think. Lighter side of hockey now. These digitized ads, the amount of people that are editing them to make it kind of whatever they want it to look like, and kind of make a mockery of it. I seen one the other day on Twitter from Pete Blackburn, and it says that Gary Bettman is cool, and then it's all pictures of Gary Bettman, and behind the net it says, and handsome too. What do you think of these digitized ads?
They haven't bothered me as much as they bothered some people. I mean, they're a little bit of a pain in the butt, but I don't know. I get it, right? You're doing whatever you can to make as much money for the game as possible. And hey, if your team's salary cap goes, if the Habs salary cap goes up a couple million, and when you're super competitive again in 2 or 3 years, you can sign another guy because maybe they brought in another whatever $1 million from digital ads. I'm just too. I just too many other things for me in the world to worry about than worry about something. I don't. I guess they're a little bit distracting, but I think like anything else, to just get used to it. I remember when the first down line went in football, and some people said that's distracting from. I'm old enough to remember when that yellow first line down line went in, and people were like, "This is taken away from the purity of the game." And now, what would we do without it, right?
Yeah,
Or the bug. Again, I'm old enough where the bug, what we call the bug, which is the top of the corner of the screen that shows the score, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in an age where none of that happened. And now if the bug goes down for 30 seconds, you're like, where's my damn score? So I know what time the game it is. So I think we'll get used to everything else, and it doesn't bother me.
The glitches in it reminds me, though, who was it that came out with the puck? It was the puck tracker.
The Fox.
Fox.
The puck.
Yeah. There was actually,
this reminds me of.
To me, like the glow puck, it was what it was called. It had some merit if they used it, like just in replays or something.
Yeah.
It just in intermissions. To have it the whole game was ridiculous, but I think if they used it sparingly, it would have been more successful. Yeah. They tried to stick it in the game and not realizing.
I like that. That's your next idea. Bring the puck tracker back.
Yeah.
Only on replays whenever they draw the X's and O's at intermission and.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go, Duthie. Just an ideas guy. I love it. I love it.
Hey, boys, I got about a 4-minute window before I got to go pick up my daughter. I hope I don't want to rush through things. Is that okay?
Fine. Do you want to touch this?
Yeah,
this is the last thing we had, anyways.
In the last couple of days after the World Junior happened, a few guys either from Play for Canada or went back to their teams in the OHL, the WHL, got shifted over. Shane Wright being one of them. All these draft picks that are being involved.
Right.
With these like crazy amounts. You've seen guys get traded, 1 or 2 draft picks and future considerations, but you're looking at like 8 to 10 draft picks. Do you think this is like just because these guys are so good and maybe it'll switch like next year, or you think this will be like something that's gonna continue on?
Yeah, I'd like to go back. Like I don't know. These trades have happened forever. But maybe they get more attention now. I'm not sure that they've ever had the volume of this many picks, but I know there's usually 6 involved or something. This is, the way of junior hockey is you go for it for a couple of years, and then, unless like certain teams like the London Knights or whatever seem to be good all the time, but the real rich junior franchises. But for the most part, you have like a 2-year window maybe where you have a ton of talent, you go for it, and you go for the Memorial Cup, and then you sort of rebuild for the next 5 or 6 or whatever that is. And it's in some ways, I wish, wouldn't it be great if the NHL was like this? If all the great big stars got traded every year at the deadline?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like, it's amazing. Like basically junior hockey. I shouldn't suggest this because we'll end up doing an 8-hour show. But Matt, if you told all the CHL to wait until like the deadline day, and all these deals were announced, and you had the 10 biggest players in junior hockey traded every single year, it's insane. Yeah. But it's just the way of the world that, every year there's 4 or 5 teams that really go for it in each one of the particular leagues. And so you get these nutty trades like that, where we're just going to mortgage our future for the next 2 to 3 years to try to win a Memorial Cup or get to a Memorial Cup. And then we'll worry about next year making trades to get those draft picks back ourselves. But it is insane especially when you see it on what we call a board, like on SportsCenter. Yeah. You see these 9 picks on the one side of the column. It's insane.
Well, especially today's Dylan Gunther, who's still at Arizona, may not even play junior hockey again. And there was like a haul of 6 picks and 2 players, and I was just like, "You are bad."
They got to know he's going back. In that case,
there's got to be something.
I don't think you make that deal unless you know he's going back. Like the Zellweger one was. I don't know if that's the one with the most picks.
That was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Now he's the guy, like that guy. Shane Wright's an awesome player, But Zellweger would be a guy I think that like that guy could win you a Memorial Cup. Like he can play 32 minutes a game in the playoffs and be incredible. So yeah. Bedard would be fascinating, but apparently he's not going to get traded. So
yeah. Well, we figured that was a long shot, but
yeah,
the odds on FanDuel weren't my favorite.
yeah.
Well, James, I appreciate you giving the time, and it was trying, and I'm sure you're sick of seeing my name pop up in your emails every couple days. But we definitely appreciate you coming on. I had a blast. This is my World Cup, my Stanley Cup final. So I definitely appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, we have you again in the future if you enjoyed yourself. But thanks, and look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks on my I'm actually feeling something sick, Tracy. That's my boss. I'm gonna have to have that day off.
I appreciate it, boys. Again, sorry it took so long to figure this out, but my pleasure coming on, and for sure we'll do it again someday. Okay.
All right, perfect. Appreciate it, James. You take care.
Thanks, James.
All the best. See you guys.
Bye.
Both guys, 5 minutes each for fighting.
Wow.
So you're saying there's another city.
No, yeah. So just because of the president, okay. So this is the same league president. We didn't really like him much, right? He was a bit of a, I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember why, but we didn't have too much in common with this guy, right? So he's a little bit of a weasel, and he's coming to the bar at the hotel, and he wants to have drinks with us, and he's been drinking probably all game, and we lost that night. So we're just sitting at the bar having a few drinks, just relaxing because we gotta the next morning we're driving out. So he's on us, he's being a pain in the ass, and we're like, get out of here, right? He wants to talk and he wants to, So we end up, he goes to bed. He goes to bed, and then so I'll name the players. There's me, Ben Deschamps, LP Charbonneau, Denny Lamoureux, probably other guys, but I'll keep it at that for now. So we start thinking, we have a few drinks, and we get snowed in that night. We have to leave. That's why we're staying overnight. That's right. We got snowed in, so we're only traveling the next day. So we get upstairs, and then Ben goes, let's get what's his name? Let's get the president. So we got to find a way to get into his room, right? So we send somebody down, one of the rookies, and we're like, you got to make sure you get a key to this room. So you got to lie, you got to say your families or whatever t'es parenté avec le gars qui est dans cette chambre-là, right? You know this guy, you're related. So he gets the key, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. So we go in, we make masks with towels or something, right? And this guy's sleeping, he's passed out, he's drunk, right? So we make masks with the towels, and we run in, and we just soak them with in poubelle there, a garbage pail full of water, and we just drench them. So that starts out that way. So the guys are drinking a little bit, we're having fun. And then what we used to do back those days, the funny thing was to put water in a little garbage pail, and you lean it against the door, and then you knock at the door, and then the guy sees there's nobody through the peephole, and then he opens the door, and as he opens the door, the water soaks the room, right?
Yeah.
So that's the funny whatever rookie move to do. So we're doing the water stuff for a bit. One of the guys just loses it. He gets the hose. He gets the hose out, the fire hose from the thing, the little window there, the door there.
Yeah.
He gets the hose, and then he comes up to the door, and he puts it at the bottom of the door, and he opens the fire hose in the hotel. The water's pissing through my room, like going through the floor, and then right up to the ceiling. So there's fire hose going on. We're like, the guy, I won't name the guy that did it, but he's just losing it. He's just having a ball. He's having fun, right? So we expect at that moment, we're like, okay, we're in trouble. And we're expecting somebody from downstairs, from front desk, right, to show up and then just lose their shit. And then we get in trouble and we get kicked out. Never anybody showed up. Nobody noticed nothing. Okay, so the party, that part of the party just goes on for like, honestly, Corey was sleeping, right? Well, make sure to mention that Corey was sleeping. He's got nothing to do with this, but it honestly went on for a long time. Okay, the hose à pompe, the fire hose was used for more than one room. Okay, let's put it this way. We eventually go to bed. Nobody showed up. We're just confused why nobody showed up yet, right? No maid or nobody, right? So we fell asleep and end up knocking on our doors. The cleaning ladies are losing it. They're like, "What's going on, right? What did you guys do here?" Because the hallway is soaked. The carpet is just drenched. So they start knocking on doors, and we're like, "Oh, je sais pas. Nobody knows. Nobody knows nothing." So listen to this. We go to check out, and as we're leaving, I won't name the name of the owner, but one of the owners comes up to the front desk, and the lady goes, "Ça va coûter 1000 piastres de dommages pour les tapis puis l'eau." And she says it'll be an extra $1,000. He got out. He a fouillé dans sa poche. He just looked in his pocket, forked out 10 $100 bills, and he gives it to her. And he looked at me, he goes, "Papa, on a eu du fun pour 1000 piastres au moins." He said, "We had fun. We had about $1,000 fun." Oh my goodness. And that was it. I thought we'd get in trouble for that, but no, we didn't get it. That was it. But yeah, that was quite
just when I thought this league couldn't get more interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh la la. Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't expect Corey in on that. Corey, you're tame.
Well, hey, my roommate was Kenny McLeod.
Yeah.
I don't know if the hose was going underneath our door.
Yeah, Kenny was a tough customer. I don't know if I would have pulled anything with Kenny.
Oh man. There's a lot of pressure in that hose, I'll tell you that much. There's a lot
that's the thing. I can just imagine.
Oh man, it was pissing up to the roof, to the ceiling for sure. But the thing is, I never understood why there wasn't an alarm that went off. Like nothing went off. The water was going, but there was nothing.
Well, I just wonder how many people are going to be watching this and getting ideas now. Well, fuck, now we know there's no alarm going off. It says there, don't pull, it'll trigger alarm. Well, we know that's a lie now.
I'll tell you one thing, the guy that was operating that hose, oh wow. Yeah.
The one thing so far that I've gathered from this interview is you don't want to be caught anywhere near Benoit Deschamps.
I'll give you a hint. It wasn't Ben Deschamps. It wasn't Ben. The hose wasn't Ben Deschamps, but you're narrowing it in. You're pretty good.
Well, you only named 5 people. And you said it wasn't you because you were in your bed. So I already know 2 out of the 5. It's
there you go.
You left us with LP, and Denis Lamoureux.
Oh la la.
So Corey, I'm assuming you had heard that before Paul just said that.
Well, he was there. He was sleeping, but he
was sleeping. He was sleeping.
He walked up into water in the morning, right?
Yeah. So when we walked out in the hallway, the hose was unraveled out of the thing. I
didn't even bother to try and cover it up.
This guy's, they don't wrap it up after they're done, and they're putting.
Oh man,
Jesus Murphy!
Wow, I hadn't talked about that in a long time. That's funny.
Oh,
that's wild.
Yeah.
But to actually see a guy use it in a hallway, you're like, come on, you're losing your mind right now. You're out. He's just laughing. This was nothing. I guess he wasn't up to his first prank for sure, man. Wow. Aye. Ça c'est drôle.